The Alabama Senate passed a bill last week that some believe creates a conflict of interest in autism therapy oversight.
ABA advocates fear what turning over licensing to the Alabama Department of Mental Health could mean in the long run for families with loved ones on the spectrum. News 4's Jacqueline Lambert spoke with advocates who oppose the change.
Senate Bill 113 could push the board that licenses autism therapists in Alabama to an advisory role. Instead, the State Department of Mental Health would take over.
You start taking away independent, professionalized oversight of a profession.
Alabama families use applied behavior analysis more than ever. The 2017 insurance law drove that growth. ABA advocate Mary Elizabeth Christian saw the therapy transform her daughter Grace's life.
Our daughter at the time was completely nonverbal. She was very agitated most of the time because she couldn't communicate at all. Those years we used ABA for many things. And we used it to teach communication. We used it for toilet training. We used it to teach, toleration of things as simple as a bath. And so it opened up her world. It really, I think, allowed us to give Grace a joy-filled life.
Like any field, the Alabama Behavior Analytic Licensing Board, comprised of behavior analysts, authorizes providers who specialize in this kind of therapy. Advocates initially supported Senate Bill 113. It would have extended the licensing board, but the bill changed and gives licensing power to the State Department of Mental Health, a conflict of interest to some.
It takes Alabama Department of Mental Health, who is a mental health provider, a mental health payer. They determine who gets paid in many cases, particularly with respect to Medicaid, and now makes them the licensor. Like they are now responsible for watching themselves, for regulating themselves. This is a terrible conflict of interest, and it is the reason why no other state in America follows this model.
Christian is wary of the way this major amendment to the bill was added, questioning if it is what she calls legislative shenanigans. Ultimately, it is the potential impact on families that is most concerning for these two advocates, which is why they want legislators to talk to those in the field.
And I've seen, over the years, what it looked like for my daughter, who got good services because we had resources, and people who didn't get services, right? And it is night and day.
Or at least hold it until you have an opportunity to talk to stakeholders and get a full 360 perspective, and we can see how damaging this is going to be for the behavior analytic workforce in Alabama, and ultimately for waitlist, for people who need early intensive behavior intervention right now, but are now going to be, with provider shortages, waiting longer and longer and longer and missing that critical developmental window.
In Montgomery, Jacqueline Lambert, your hometown news leader.
Senator Chris Elliott sponsored the bill but was not available for comment. It now heads to the House for a vote next week.